Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a topic that youth and affordable housing. Challenges faced by first-time renters. For millions of young people worldwide, navigating adulthood involves entering the rental housing market. The joys of independence, fresh starts, and making a life for oneself beyond the family home so often are dampened by sheer economic depravity. In both developed and developing countries alike, young renters, particularly first-time home entrants, are confronted with affordability, accessibility, and structural impediments that make gaining access to safe, stable, affordable housing more challenging. Housing markets altogether have undergone a sea change over the last 20 years owing to increased urbanization, supply shortage, global economic shocks, and policy failures. Those changes disadvantage younger generations just starting on their financial journeys, and who often juggle student debt, insecure work, and wages that trend below the average. Gap between how much people earn and the rent they pay. The increasing gap between wages and rents is a key factor in some of the most urgent problems faced by younger renters. Entry-level salaries or hourly wages still run to cover the cost of housing for most first-time renters in major cities. Even in the places where rental markets saw modest declines, the average rent is still miles beyond what can be reasonably afforded by young workers. The usual benchmark, no more than 30% of income going toward rent, is nearly out of reach for young renters in much of the nation's urban areas. A great many wind up putting 40 to 60% of their paycheck toward housing, leaving little for savings, health care, public transportation, or emergencies. Structural barriers in rental markets. When young renters can afford to rent a unit, there are often structural barriers that prevent access to housing. Landlords often have stringent conditions, such as large security deposits, guarantors, evidence of full-time employment, and a good credit record. For first-time renters, who often have emerging credit scores and unstable jobs, these barriers can seem insurmountable. Even part-time students or those with family support are routinely turned away from the rental market, perpetuating cycles of marginalization. And even rental markets tend to discriminate against young people on the assumption that they're less responsible, at lease signing, or more likely to cause damage. This bias results in increased rent requests, oppressive lease terms, or denial altogether. Youths of color, LGBTQ youth, and low-income youths who experience discrimination based on race, gender, economic status, which restrict their options for housing even more. Social consequences of insecure housing. Housing insecurity among young people is about more than just the lack of shelter itself. It ripples through almost every part of their world. A stable place to live is the foundation upon which young people can build a future, and without it, they are unable to access education, remain employed, or attend to their emotional and physical well-being. Such financial stress, overpaying rent at least, puts first-time renters in a state of chronic insecurity. Mental health implications are huge. Research has found that in general, young renters who are housing insecure are also more likely to report symptoms of anxiety, depression, and hopelessness. The pressure of rents they struggled to pay, and a constant threat of eviction stifles their opportunities to study or work. This frustration carries over into personal life, social life, and the dreams of my future. Policy and governance. Implications. Nations determine the framework of rental environments, but government housing policies do little for young renters. Most affordable housing projects are geared to families and seniors, but this leaves a whole group of people unaddressed. Youth. It is this policy void that compounds the crisis, as novice renters aren't immediately supported to navigate the rental market. Some governments have tried housing schemes tailored to young people, like rent supplements, student housing plans, or even shared co-living arrangements. Although these temporary measures offer immediate relief, they are seldom expanded or assimilated within such larger housing strategies. Instead, Young people are stuck in volatile rental markets where most of the power sits with landlords. Innovative housing models for youth. The youth housing crisis is spawning new housing models. Co-living, micro-apartments, and cooperative housing are emerging as alternatives to the traditional rental. Each of these models emphasizes price, choice, and togetherness, making them ideal for clustering young renters. Co-living spaces, which share facilities among residents while giving each a private bedroom. This saves costs and fosters a community atmosphere, addressing both affordability and the loneliness so many new renters often feel. And micro-apartments, smaller units that are more efficiently designed, offer the opportunity for affordable living in both dense cities with little space to waste. Toward equity in youth housing. The struggles of young renters point to a larger problem of fairness that is searing American housing markets. The lack of affordable housing is more than an economic problem, but a matter of justice and access. Young adults should have a fair chance to buy stable, affordable homes without compromising their health, education, or financial future. Supporting equity in youth housing requires recognition that young renters do not represent a single demographic. Variations of income, race, and gender and geography all structure housing experiences. To tackle these inequalities, policies and programs that recognize diversity, in its many forms, are needed, as well as those that take account of the vulnerabilities of young people. Global lessons. How other countries support young renters. Although the housing crisis for young people is a worldwide concern, nations have adopted differing policies to solve problems of affordability and access as first-time renters. Examining these international cases provides important clues as to how creative policies and cultural change can pave the way for young people. Renting is viewed in much of Europe not so much as a way station on the road to home ownership, but as a permanent and even desirable option. After all, Germany's housing system is frequently cited as a poster child for tenant protection and affordability. Essentially, in Germany, rent increases are highly regulated by law, and tenants receive robust protections, while landlords have incentives to sign multi-year leases. This would allow young people to plan ahead for their future, without the persistent fear of being kicked out or priced out. The general acceptance of long-term renting also eliminates the stigma that tenants commonly encounter in other countries. Japan has meanwhile responded to urban density and affordability by promoting micro-housing and compact living. Young renters in Tokyo and other big cities typically inhabit relatively small but extremely well-appointed apartments in which space is at a premium. Not everyone is going to want this kind of condo, but it represents a cultural openness to tweaking housing so that youth can get in. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.